Good evening and welcome to Bominable Bominations, Tales of Classic Horror. Tonight I present to you the second half of Dante's Inferno, beginning from Canto 18. Luogo inferno detto malebolge, tutto di pietra di color ferrigno, come la cerchia che d'intorno il volge, nel dritto mezzo del campo wide and deep, whose structure I will speak of in due place. The margin that remains between the base of the high rocky bank and the well is circular, and its floor is divided into 10 moats. Like the form the ground reveals, where successive ditches circle a castle to defend the walls, such was the layout displayed here. And as there are bridges to the outer bank from the thresholds of the fortress, so, from the base of the cliff, causeways ran, crossing the successive banks and ditches, down to the well that terminates and links them. We found ourselves there, shaken from Gerion's back, and the poet kept to the left, and I went on, behind him. On the right I saw new pain and torment, and new tormentors, with which the first chasm was filled. In its depths the sinners were naked. On our inner side of its central round they came towards us. On the outer side, with us, but with larger steps. So the people of Rome, in that year, at the Jubilee, because of the great crowds, initiated this means to pass the people over the bridge. Those on the one side all had their faces towards Castello Sant'Angelo, and went to St. Peter's, those on the other towards Monte Giordano. On this side and on that, along the fearful rock, I saw horned demons with large whips, who struck them fiercely from behind. Ah, how it made them quicken their steps at the first stroke. Truly, none waited for the second or third. As I went on, my eyes encountered one of them, and instantly I said, "This shade I have seen before." So I stopped to scrutinize him, and the kind guide stood still with me, and allowed me to return a little. And that scourged spirit thought to hide himself, lowering his face, but it did not help, since I said, "You, who cast your eyes on the ground, if the features you display are not an illusion, you are Venedico Caccianimico. But what led you into such a biting pickle, and he to me?"
"I tell it unwillingly. But your clear speech that makes me remember the former world compels me. It was I who induced the fair Gisola to do the Marquis ofEste's will, however unpleasant the story sounds, and I am not the only Bolognese that weeps here. This place is so filled with us that as many tongues are no longer taught to say sipa for si between the Cevenna's stream that is west and the Rhinos that is east of Bologna. If you want assurance and testimony of it, recall to mind our avaricious hearts." And as he spoke, a demon struck him with his whip, and he said,
"Away, panda! There are no women here to sell."
I rejoined my guide. Then, in a few steps, we came to where a causeway ran from the cliff. This we climbed very easily, and, turning to the right on its jagged ridge, we moved away from that eternal round. When we reached the arch where it yawns below to leave a path for the scourged, my guide said, "Wait, and let the aspect of those other ill-born spirits strike you, whose faces you have not yet seen, since they have been going in our direction." We viewed their company from the ancient bridge, travelling towards us on the other side, chased likewise by the whip. Without my asking, the kind master said to me, "Look at that great soul who comes, and seems not to shed tears of pain. What a royal aspect he still retains. That is Jason, who, by wisdom and courage, robbed the Colchians of the golden fleece. He sailed by the Isle of Lemnos, after the bold, merciless women there had put all their males to death. There, with gifts and sweet words, he deceived the young Hypsipyle, who had saved her father by deceiving all the rest. He left her there, pregnant and lonely. Such guilt condemns him to such torment,
and revenge is also taken for his abandoning Medea. With him go all who practice like deceit, and let this be enough for knowledge of the first chasm, and those whom it swallows." We had already come to where the narrow causeway crossed the second bank, and forms a buttress to a second arch. Here we heard people whining in the next chasm, and blowing with their muzzles, and striking themselves with their palms. The banks were crusted with a mould from the fumes below that condenses on them and attacks the eyes and nose. The floor is so deep that we could not see any part of it, except by climbing to the ridge of the arch where the rock is highest. We came there, and from it, in the ditch below, I saw people immersed in excrement that looked as if it flowed from human privies. And while I was searching it, down there with my eyes, I saw one with a head so smeared with ordure that it was not clear if he was clerk or layman. He shouted at me, "Why are you so keen to gaze at me more than the other mired ones?" And I to him, "Because, if I remember rightly, I have seen you before with dry head, and you are Alessio Intermine of Lucca, so I eye you more than all the others." And he then, beating his forehead, "The flatteries, of which my tongue never wearied, have brought me down to this." At which my guide said to me, "Advance your head a little, so that your eyes can clearly see, over there, the face of that filthy and dishevelled piece who scratches herself with her soiled nails, now crouching down, now rising to her feet. It is Thais, the whore, who answered her lover's message in which she asked, 'Do you really return me great thanks?' with 'No, wondrous thanks,' and let our looking be sated with this. O Simon Magus, O you, his rapacious, wretched followers, who prostitute for gold and silver the things of God that should be wedded to virtue. Now the trumpets must sound for you, since you are in the third chasm." Already we had climbed to the next arch, onto that part of the causeway that hangs right over the centre of the ditch. O supreme wisdom, how great the art is that you display in the heavens, on earth, and in the underworld, and how justly your virtue acts. On the sides and floor of the fosse I saw the livid stone full of holes, all of one width, and each one rounded. They seemed no narrower or larger than those in my beautiful baptistry of St. John, made as places to protect those baptizing, one of which I broke not many years ago to aid a child inside, and let this be a sign of the truth to end all speculation. From the mouth of each hole a sinner's feet and legs emerged, up to the calf, and the rest remained inside. The soles were all on fire, so that the joints quivered so strongly that they would have snapped grass ropes and willow branches. As the flame of burning, oily liquids moves only on the surface, so it was in their case, from the heels to the legs. I said, "Master, who is that who twists himself about, writhing more than all his companions and licked by redder flames?" And he to me, "If you will let me carry you down there by the lower bank, you will learn from him about his sins and himself." And I, "Whatever pleases you is good for me. You are my lord, and know that I do not deviate from your will. Also you know what is not spoken." Then we came onto the fourth buttress. We turned and descended, on the left, down into the narrow and perforated depths. The kind master did not let me leave his side until he took me to the hole occupied by the one who so agonized with his feet. I began to speak. "O unhappy spirit, whoever you are, who have your upper parts below, planted like a stake, form words if you can." I stood like the friar who gives confession to a treacherous assassin, who, after being fixed in the ground, calls the confessor back, and so delays his burial. And he cried, "Are you standing there already, Boniface? Are you standing there already?
The book of the future has deceived me by several years. Are you sated so swiftly with that wealth for which you did not hesitate to seize the church, our lovely lady, and then destroy her?"
I came like those who stand, not knowing what has been said to them, and unable to reply, exposed to scorn. Then Virgil said, "Quickly, say to him, I am not him. I am not whom you think." And I replied as I was instructed, at which the spirit's legs writhed fiercely. Then, sighing in a tearful voice, he said to me,
"Then what do you want of me? If it concerns you so much to know who I am, that you have left the ridge, know that I wore the great mantle, and truly I was son of the Orsini she-bear, so eager to advance her cubs, that I pursued up wealth above, and here myself. The other simonists who came before me are drawn down below my head, cowering inside the cracks in that stone. I too will drop down there when Boniface comes, the one I mistook you for when I put my startled question. But the extent of time in which I have baked my feet and stood like this reversed is already longer than the time he shall stand planted in turn with glowing feet, since, after him, will come Clement, the lawless shepherd of uglier actions, fit indeed to cap Boniface and me. He will be a new Jason, the high priest whom we read about in Maccabees, and as his king Antiochus was compliant, so will Philip be, who governs France."
I do not know if I was too foolhardy then, but I answered him in this way. "Ah, now tell me, how much wealth the Lord demanded of Peter before he gave the keys of the church into his keeping? Surely he demanded nothing, saying only, 'Follow me.' Nor did Peter or the other apostles ask gold or silver of Matthias when he was chosen to fill the place that Judas, the guilty soul, had forfeited. So remain here, since you are justly punished, and keep well the ill-gotten money that made you so bold against Charles of Anjou. And were it not that I am still restrained by reverence for the great keys that you held in your hand in the joyful life, I would use even more forceful words, since your avarice grieves the world, trampling the good and raising the wicked. John the Evangelist spoke of shepherds such as you, when he saw the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, she that was born with 7 heads, and as long as virtue pleased her spouse, had justification. You have made a god for yourselves of gold and silver, and how do you differ from the idolaters, except that he worships one image, and you 100? Ah, Constantine, how much evil you gave birth to, not in your conversion, but in that donation that the first wealthy Pope, Sylvester, received from you. And while I sung these notes to him, he thrashed violently with both his feet, either rage or conscience gnawing him. I think it pleased my guide greatly. He had so satisfied an expression, listening to the sound of the true words I spoke. So he lifted me with both his arms, and when he had me quite upon his breast, climbed back up the path he had descended, and did not tire of carrying me clasped to him, till he had borne me to the summit of the arch, that crosses from the 4th to the 5th rampart. Here he set his burden down, lightly, light for him on the rough steep cliff that would be a difficult path for a goat. From there, another valley was visible to me. I must make verses of new torments, and give matter for this 20th canto, of the Inferno that treats of the damned. I was now quite ready to look into the ditch, bathed with tears of anguish which was revealed to me. I saw people coming, silent and weeping, through the circling valley, at a pace which processions that chant litanies take through the world. When my eyes looked further down on them, each of them appeared strangely distorted between the chin and the start of the chest, since the head was reversed towards the body, and they had to move backwards, since they were not allowed to look forwards. Perhaps one might be so distorted by palsy, but I have not seen it, and do not credit it. Reader, as God may grant that you profit from your reading, think now yourself how I could keep from weeping, when I saw our image so contorted, nearby, that the tears from their eyes bathed their hind parts at the cleft. Truly I wept, leaning against one of the rocks of the solid cliff, so that my guide said to me, "Are you like other fools as well? Pity is alive here, where it is best forgotten. Who is more impious than one who bears compassion for God's judgment? Lift your head, lift it, and see him for whom earth opened under the eyes of the Thebans, at which they all shouted, 'Where are you rushing, Amphiaraos? Why do you quit the battle?' And he did not stop his downward rush until he reached Minos, who grasps every sinner. Note how he has made a chest of his shoulders, because he willed to see too far beyond him. He now looks behind and goes backwards. See Tiresias, who changed his form when he was made a woman, all his limbs altering, and later he had to strike the two entwined snakes with his staff a second time before he could resume a male aspect. That one is Aruns, who has his back to Tiresias's belly, he who in the mountains of Tuscan Luni, where the Carrarese who live beneath him, had a cave to live in, among the white marble, from which he could gaze at the stars and the sea, with nothing to spoil his view. And she that hides her breasts, that you cannot see, with her flowing tresses, and has all hairy skin on the other side, was Manto, who searched through many lands, then settled where I was born, about which it pleases me to have you listen to me speak a while. After her father departed from life, and Thebes, the city of Bacchus, came to be enslaved, she roamed the world a long time. A lake, Lake Garda, lies at the foot of the Alps, up in beautiful Italy, where Germany is closed off beyond the Tyrol. Mount Appennino, between the town of Garda and Val Camonica, is bathed by the water that settles in the lake. In the middle there is a place where the bishops of Trent, Brescia, and Verona might equally give the blessing if they went that way. A strong and beautiful fortress stands, where the shoreline is lowest, to challenge the Brescians and Bergamese. There all the water that cannot remain in the breast of Lake Garda has to descend through the green fields and form a river. As soon as the water has its head, it is no longer Garda, but Mincio, down to Governolo, where it joins the Po. It has not flowed far before it finds the level, on which it spreads and makes a marsh there, and in summer tends to be unwholesome. Manto, the wild virgin, passing that way, saw untilled land, naked of inhabitants among the fens. There, to avoid all human contact, she stayed with her followers to practice her arts, and lived there, and left her empty body. Then the people who were scattered round gathered together in that place, which was well defended by the marshes on every side. They built the city over those dead bones, and without other augury, called it Mantua, after her who first chose the place. Once there were more inhabitants, before Casalodi was foolishly deceived by Pinamonte. So I charge you, if you ever hear another story of the origin of my city, do not let falsehoods destroy the truth. And I said, Master, your speeches are so sound to me, and so hold my belief, that any others are like spent ashes. But tell me about the people who are passing, if you see any of them worth noting, since my mind returns to that alone. Then he said to me, That one, whose beard stretches down from his cheeks over his dusky shoulders, was an augur, when Greece was so emptied of males for the expedition against Troy that there were scarcely any left, even in their cradles. Like Culchus at Aulis, he set the moment for cutting loose the first cable. Eurypylus is his name.
and my high poem sings of it in a certain place. You know it well, who know the whole thing. The other, so thin about the flanks, is Michael Scott, who truly understood the fraudulent game of magic. See Guido Bonatti, see Asdente, who wishes now he had attended more to his shoemaker's leather and cord, but repents too late. See the miserable women who abandoned needle, shuttle, and spindle, and became prophetesses. They made witchcraft using herbs and images. But come, now for Cain with his bundle of thorns. That man in the moon reaches the western confines of both hemispheres and touches the waves south of Seville, and already, last night, the moon was full. You must remember it clearly, since she did not serve you badly in the deep wood. So he spoke to me, and meanwhile we moved on. So from bridge to bridge we went, with other conversation which my commedia does not choose to recall, and were at the summit arch when we stopped to see the next cleft of Malabolg, and more vain grieving, and I found it marvellously dark. As in the Venetian arsenal, the glutinous pitch boils in winter that they use to caulk the leaking boats they cannot sail, and so, instead one man builds a new boat, another plugs the seams of his that has made many voyages, one hammers at the prow, another at the stern, some make oars and some twist rope, one mends a jib, the other a mainsail. So a dense pitch boiled down there, not melted by fire, but by divine skill, and glued the banks over on every side. I saw it, but nothing in it, except the bubbles that the boiling caused, and the heaving of it all, and the cooling part's submergence. While I was gazing fixedly at it, my guide said, take care, and drew me towards him from where I stood. Then I turned round, like one who has to see what he must run from, and who is attacked by sudden fear, so that he dare not stop to look, and behind us I saw a black demon come running up the cliff. Ah, how fierce his aspect was, and how cruel he seemed in action, with his outspread wings and nimble legs. His high pointed shoulders carried a sinner's 2 haunches, and he held the sinews of each foot high. He cried,
You, Malebranche, the evil Claude, see here is one of Lucca's elders, that city whose patron is Santa Zita. Push him under while I go back for the rest, back to that city which is well provided with them. Every one there is a barata, except Bonturo. There they make yes of no for money. He threw him down, then wheeled back along the stony cliff, and never was a mastiff loosed so readily to catch a thief. The sinner plunged in, and rose again writhing, but the demons under cover of the bridge shouted, Here the face of Christ, carved in your cathedral, is of no avail. Here you swim differently than in the Cerchio, so, unless you want to try our grapples, do not emerge above the pitch. Then they struck at him with more than 100 prongs, and said, Here you must dance, concealed, so that you steal in private, if you can. No different is it when the cooks make their underlings push the meat down into the depths of the cauldrons with their hooks to stop it floating. The good master said to me, Cower down behind a rock, so that you have a screen to protect yourself, and so that it is not obvious that you are here, and whatever insult is offered to me, have no fear, since I know these matters, having been in a similar danger before. Then he passed beyond the bridgehead, and when he arrived on the 6th bank, it was necessary for him to present a bold front. The demons rushed from below the bridge and turned their weapons against him, with the storm and fury with which a dog rushes at a poor beggar who suddenly seeks alms when he stops. But Virgil cried, None of you commit an outrage. Before you touch me with your forks, one of you come over here to listen, and then discuss whether you will grapple me. They all cried, You go, Malacoda, at which one moved while the others stood still, and came towards Virgil, saying, What good will it do him?
My master said, Malacoda, do you think I have come here without the divine will and propitious fate, safe from all your obstructions? Let me go by, since it is willed in heaven that I show another this wild road. Then the demon's pride was so down that he let the hook drop at his feet and said to the others,
Now, do not hurt him!
And my guide to me, Oh, you, who are sitting, crouching amongst the bridge's crags, return to me safely now. At which I moved and came to him quickly, and the devils all pressed forward, so that I was afraid they would not hold to their orders. So I once saw the infantry marching out under treaty of surrender from Caprona, afraid at finding themselves surrounded by so many enemies. I pressed my whole body close to my guide, and did not take my eyes away from their aspect, which was hostile. They lowered their hooks and kept saying to one another,
Shall I touch him on the backside?
And answering,
Yes, see that you give him a nick.
But that demon who was talking to my guide turned round quickly and said,
Begone! Be quiet, Scarmiglione!
Then he said to us,
It will not be possible to go any further along this causeway, since the 6th arch is lying broken at the base. And if you desire still to go forward, go along this ridge, and nearby is another cliff that forms a causeway. Yesterday, 5 hours later than this hour, 1,266 years were completed since this path here was destroyed. I am sending some of my company there to see if anyone is out for an airing. Go with them. They will not commit treachery.
Then he began speaking.
Advance, Alicchino and Calcabrina, and you, Cagnazzo, let Barbariccia lead the 10. Let Libicocco come as well, and Ragagnazzo, Tusked Siriatto, Graficane, Farfarello, and Rubicante, the mad one. Search round the boiling glue. See these 2 safe, as far as the other cliff that crosses the chasms completely without a break.
I said, Oh me, Master, what do I see? Oh, let us go alone without an escort, if you know the way. As for me, I would prefer not. If you are as cautious as usual, do you not see how they grind their teeth and darken their brows, threatening us with mischief? And he to me, I do not want you to be afraid. Let them grin away at their will, since they do it for the boiled wretches. They turned by the left bank, but first each of them had stuck his tongue out between his teeth towards their leader as a signal, and he had made a trumpet of his ass. I have seen cavalry moving camp before now, starting a foray, holding muster, and now and then retiring to escape. I have seen war horses on your territory, O Aretines, and seen the foraging parties, the clash of tournaments, and repeated jousts, now with trumpets, now with bells, with drums and rampart signals, with natives and foreign devices, but I never yet saw infantry or cavalry, or ship at sight of shore or star, move to such an obscene trumpet. We went with the 10 demons. Ah, savage company. But, they say, in church with the saints, and in the inn with the drunkards. But my mind was on the boiling pitch, to see each feature of the chasm, and the people who were burning in it. Like dolphins arching their backs, telling the sailors to get ready to save their ship, so, now and then, to ease the punishment, some sinner showed his back, and hid as quick as lightning. And as frogs squat at the edge of the ditch water, with only their mouths showing so that their feet and the rest of them are hidden, so the sinners stood on every side, but they instantly shot beneath the seething as Barbariccia approached. I saw, and my heart still shudders at it, one linger, just as one frog remains when the others scatter, and Grafiacane, who was nearest him, hooked his pitchy hair and hauled him up, looking to me like an otter. I already knew the names of every demon, So I noted them well as they were called, and when they shouted to each other, I listened out.
"Oh, Rubicante, see you get your clutches in him and flay him,"
all the accursed tribe called together, and I, "Master, make out if you can who that wretch is who has fallen into the hands of his enemies." My guide drew close to him and asked him where he came from, and he answered, "I was born in the kingdom of Navarre. My mother placed me as a servant to a lord, since she had borne me to a scurrilous waster of himself and his possessions. Then I was of the household of good King Thibaut, and there I took to selling offices, for which I served my sentence in this heat." And Ciriato, from whose mouth a tusk like a boar's projected on each side, made him feel how one of them could rip. The mouse had come among the evil cats, but Barbarica caught him in his arms and said,
"Stand back while I fork him."
And turning to my master, he said,
"Ask away if you want to learn more from him before someone else gets at him."
So my guide said, "Now, say, do you know any of the other sinners under the boiling pitch that is a Latian?" And Ciampolo replied, "I separated just now from one who was a neighbour of theirs over there, and I wish I was still beneath him, since I should not then fear claw or hook." And Libicocco cried, "We have endured this too long," and grappled Ciampolo's arm with the prong, and mangling it, carried away a chunk. Tragignazzo, too, wanted a swipe at the legs below, at which their leader twisted round and round on them with an evil frown. When they had settled a little, without waiting, my guide asked Ciampolo, who was still gazing at his wound, "Who was he, from whom you say you unluckily separated to come on land?" He replied, "It was Friar Gomita, he of Gallura in Sardinia, the vessel of every fraud, who held his master's prisoners in his hands, and treated them so that they all praise him for it, taking money for himself, and letting them go quietly, and in his other roles he was a high and not a low barrator. With him Don Michel Zance of Logodoro keeps company, and their tongues never tire of speaking of Sardinia. Oh me, see that other demon grinning! I would speak more, but I fear he is getting ready to claw my skin." And their great captain, turning to Farfarello, who was rolling his eyes to strike, said,
"Away with you, cursed bird."
The scared sinner then resumed, "If you want to see or hear Tuscans or Lombards, I will make them come, but let the Malebranche hold back a little, so that the others may not feel their vengeance, and, sitting here, I, who am one, will make 7 appear by whistling, as we do, when any of us gets out." Cagnazzo raised his snout at these words, and, shaking his head, said,
"Hear the wicked scheme he has contrived to plunge back down."
At which Ciampolo, who had a great store of tricks, replied, "I would be malicious indeed if I contrived greater sorrow for my companions." Alicino, who could contain himself no longer, and, contrary to the others, said to him,
"If you run, I will not charge after you, but beat my wings above the boiling pitch. Forget the cliff, and let the bank be a course, and see if you alone can beat us."
O you that read this, hear of this new sport. They all glanced toward the cliffside, he above all who had been most unwilling for this. The Navarrese picked his moment well, planted his feet on the ground, and in an instant plunged and freed himself from their intention. Each of the demons was stung with guilt, but Alicino most, who had caused the error, so he started up and shouted,
"You are caught!"
But it helped him little, since wings could not outrun terror. The sinner dived down, and Alicino, flying, lifted his breast. The duck dives like that when the falcon nears, and the hawk flies back up, angry and thwarted. Calcabrina, furious at the trick, flew on after him, wanting the sinner to escape in order to quarrel, and when the barrator had vanished, he turned his claws on his friend, and grappled with him above the ditch.
but the other was sparrowhawk enough to claw him thoroughly, and both dropped down into the centre of the boiling pond. The heat instantly separated them, but they could not rise, their wings were so glued up. Barbaricha, lamenting with the rest, made 4 fly over to the other bank with all their grappling irons, and they dropped rapidly on both sides to the shore. They stretched their hooks out to the trapped pair, who were already scaled by the crust, and we left them like that, embroiled. Silent, alone, and free of company we went on, one in front and the other after, like minor friars journeying on their way. My thoughts were turned by the recent quarrel to Aesop's fable of the frog and mouse, since C and yes are not better matched than the one case with the other, if the thoughtful mind couples the beginning and the end. And as one thought springs from another, so another sprang from that, redoubling my fear. I thought of this. Through us, these are mocked, and with a kind of hurt and ridicule that I guess must annoy them. If anger is added to their malice, they will chase after us, fiercer than snapping dogs that chase a leveret. I felt my hair already lifting in fright, and was looking back intently as I said, "Master, if you do not hide us both quickly, I am afraid of the Malebranche. They are already behind us. I imagine I can hear them now." And he, "If I were made of silvered glass, I could not take up your image from outside more rapidly than I fix that image from within. Even now your thoughts were entering mine, with similar form and action, so that, from both, I have made one decision. If the right bank slopes enough that we can drop down into the next chasm, we will escape this imaginary pursuit." He had not finished stating this resolve when I saw them, not far off, coming with extended wings with desire to seize us. My guide suddenly took me up like a mother, wakened by a noise, seeing flames burning in front of her eyes, who takes her child and runs, and caring more about him than herself, does not even wait to look around her. Down from the ridge of the solid bank, he threw himself forward onto the hanging cliff that dams up the side of the next chasm. Water never ran as fast through the conduit, turning a mill wheel on land when it reaches the paddles, as my master, down that bank, carrying me against his breast like a son, and not a companion. His feet had hardly touched the floor of the depth below, before the demons were on the heights above us, but it gave him no fear, since the high providence that willed them to be the guardians of the fifth moat takes, from all of them, the power to leave it. Down below we found a metal-coated tribe, weeping, circling with very slow steps, and weary and defeated in their aspect. They had cloaks with deep hoods over the eyes, in the shape they make for the monks of Cologne. On the outside they are gilded so it dazzled, but inside all leaden, and so heavy that compared to them Fredericks were made of straw. A weary mantle for eternity. We turned to the left again, beside them who were intent on their sad weeping, but those people, tired by their burden, came on so slowly that our companions were new at every step, at which I said to my guide, "Make a search for someone known to us by name or action, and gaze around as we move by." And one of them, who understood the Tuscan language, called after us, "Rest at your feet. You who speed so fast through the dark air, maybe you will get from me what you request." At which my guide turned round and said, "Wait, and then go on," at his pace. I stood still and saw 2 spirits, who were eager in mind to join me, but their burden and the narrow path delayed them. When they arrived, they eyed me askance for a long time without speaking a word. Then they turned to one another and said, "This one seems alive by the movement of his throat, and if they are dead, by what grace are they moving, free of the heavy cloaks?" Then they said to me, "O Tuscan, you have come to the college of sad hypocrites. Do not scorn to tell us who you are." And I to them, "I was born and I grew up
by Arno's lovely river in the great city, and I am in the body I have always worn. But you, who are you, from whom such sadness is distilled that I see coursing down your cheeks? And what punishment is this that glitters so? And one of them replied, Our orange mantles are of such dense lead that weights made of it cause the scales to creak. We were fraudi gaudenti, of that Bolognese order called the Jovial Friars. I am Catalano, and he is Loderingo, chosen by your city as usually only one is chosen, to keep the peace, and we wrought such as still appears round your district of Gardingo. O friars, you're evil, I began, but said no more, because one came in sight, crucified on the ground, with 3 stakes. When he saw me, he writhed all over, puffing into his beard and sighing, and Friar Catalano, who saw this, said to me, That one you look at, who is transfixed, is Caiaphas, the high priest who counselled the Pharisees that it was right to martyr one man for the sake of the people. Crosswise and naked he lies in the road, as you see, and feels the weight of everyone who passes, and his father-in-law Annas is wrecked in this chasm, and the others of that council that was a source of evil to the Jews. Then I saw Virgil wonder at him, stretched out on the cross, so vilely in eternal exile. He addressed these words to the friars afterwards, If it is lawful for you, may it not displease you to tell us if there is any gap on the right, by which we might leave here without forcing any of the black angels to come and extricate us from this deep? He replied, There is a causeway that runs from the great circular wall and crosses all the cruel valleys, nearer at hand than you think, except that it is broken here and does not cover this one. You will be able to climb up among its ruins, that slope down the side, and form a mound at the base. Virgil stood for a while with bowed head, then said, Malacoda, who grapples sinners over there, told us the way wrongly. And the friar said, I once heard the devil's vices related at Bologna, amongst which I heard that he is a liar, and the father of lies. Then my guide went striding on, his face somewhat disturbed by anger, at which I parted from the burdened souls, following the prints of his beloved feet. In that part of the new year, when the sun cools his rays under Aquarius, and the nights already shorten towards the equinox, when the hoarfrost copies its white sister the snow's image on the ground, but the hardness of its tracery lasts only a little time, the peasant, whose fodder is exhausted, rises and looks out, and sees the fields all white, at which he strikes his thigh, goes back into the house, and wanders to and fro, lamenting, like a wretch who does not know what to do, then comes out again, and regains hope, seeing how the world has changed its aspect in a moment, and takes his crook, and chases his lambs out to feed. So the master made me disheartened, when I saw his forehead so troubled, but the plaster arrived quickly for the wound. For, when we reached the shattered arch, my guide turned to me with that sweet aspect that I first saw at the base of the mountain. He opened his arms, after having made some plan in his mind, first looking carefully at the ruin, and took hold of me. And, like one who prepares and calculates, always seeming to provide in advance, so he, lifting me up towards the summit of one big block, searched for another fragment, saying, Now clamber over that, but check first if it will carry you. It was no route for one clothed in a cloak of lead, since we could hardly climb from rock to rock, he weighing little, and I pushed from behind, and if the ascent were not shorter on that side than on the other, I would truly have been defeated. I do not know about him, but as Malabolgol drops towards the entrance to the lowest well, the position of every valley implies that the one side rises and the other falls. At last, We came, however, to the point at which the last boulder ends. The breath was so driven from my lungs when I was up that I could go no further. In fact, I sat down when I arrived. The master said, "Now you must free yourself from sloth. Men do not achieve fame sitting on down or under coverlets. Fame, without which whoever consumes his life leaves only such trace of himself on earth as smoke does in the air or foam on water. So rise, and overcome weariness with spirit that wins every battle, if it does not lie down with the gross body. A longer ladder must be climbed. To have left these behind is not enough. If you understand me, act now so it may profit you." I rose then, showing myself to be better filled with breath than I thought, and said, "Go on. I am strong again and ardent." We made our way along the causeway, which was rugged, narrow, difficult, and much steeper than before. I went, speaking, so that I might not seem weak, at which a voice came from the next moat, inadequate for forming words. I do not know what it said, though I was already on the summit of the bridge that crosses there, but he who spoke seemed full of anger. I had turned to look downwards, but my living eyes could not see the floor for the darkness, so that I said, "Master, make sure you get to the other side and let us climb down the wall, since, as I hear sounds from below, but do not understand them, so I see down there, and make out nothing." He said, "I make you no answer, but by action, since a fair request should be followed, in silence, by the work." We went down the bridge, at the head of it, where it meets the 8th bank, and then the 7th chasm was open to me. I saw a fearful mass of snakes inside, and of such strange appearance that even now the memory freezes my blood. Let Libya no longer vaunt its sands, though it engenders Cheladri and Jaculi, Parae and Chencres with Amphisbaena. It never showed pests so numerous or dreadful, nor did Ethiopia, nor Arabia, the land that lies along the Red Sea. Amongst this cruel and mournful swarm, people were running, naked and terrified, without hope of concealment, or of that stone, the heliotrope, that renders the wearer invisible. They had their hands tied behind them with serpents that fixed their head and tail between the loins, and were coiled in knots in front. And see, a serpent struck at one who was near our bank, and transfixed him there, where the neck is joined to the shoulders. Neither O nor I was ever written as swiftly as he took fire, and burned and dropped down, transformed to ashes. And after he was heaped on the ground, the powder gathered itself together, and immediately returned to its previous shape. So, great sages say, the phoenix dies, and then renews when it nears its 500th year. In its life it does not eat grass or grain, but only tears of incense and amomum, and its last shroud is nard and myrrh. The sinner when he rose was like one who falls and does not know how, through the power of a demon that drags him down to the ground, or through some other affliction that binds men, and, when he rises, gazes round himself, all dazed by the great anguish he has suffered, and as he gazes, sighs. Oh, how heavy the power of God, that showers down such blows and vengeance! The guide then asked him who he was, at which he answered, "I rained down from Tuscany into this gully a short while back. Brutish, not human life pleased me, mule that I was. I am Vanni Fucci, the wild beast, and Pistoia was a fitting den for me." And I to the guide, "Tell him not to move, and ask what crime sank him down here, since I knew him as a man of blood and anger." And the sinner who heard me did not pretend, but turned his face and mind on me, and gave a look of saddened shame. Then he said, "It hurts me more for you to catch me, trapped in the misery you see me in, than the moment of my being snatched from the other life.
I cannot deny what you ask. I am placed so deep down because I robbed the sacristy of its fine treasures, and it was once wrongly attributed to others. But, so that you might not take joy from this sight if you ever escape the gloomy regions, open your ears and hear what I declare. Pistoia first is thinned of blacks, then Florence changes her people and her laws. Mars brings a vapour from Valdimagra cloaked in turbid cloud, and a battle will be fought on the field of Piceno in an angry and eager tempest that will suddenly tear the mist open, so that every white is wounded by it. And I have said this to give you pain. At the end of his speech, the thief raised his hands, both making the fig, the obscene gesture with thumb between fingers, shouting, "Take this, God! I aim it at you!" From that moment, the snakes were my friends, since one of them coiled itself around his neck, as if hissing, "You will not be able to speak again." Another around his arms tied him again, knotting itself so firmly in front that he could not even shake them. Ah, Pistoia, Pistoia, why do you not order yourself to be turned to ash, so that you may remain no longer, since you outdo your seed in evil-doing? I saw no spirit so arrogant towards God through all the dark circles of the Inferno. Not even Capaneus, he who fell from the wall at Thebes. Vanni Fucci fled, saying not another word. And I saw a centaur, full of rage, come shouting, "Where is he? Where is the bitter one?" I do not believe Maremma has as many snakes as he had on his haunches, there where the human part begins. Over his shoulders, behind the head, lay a dragon with outstretched wings, and it scorches every one he meets. My master said, "This is Cacus, who often made a lake of blood below the rocks of Mount Aventine. He does not go with his brothers on the same road above, because of his cunning theft from the great herd of oxen pastured near him, for which his thieving actions ended under the club of Hercules, who gave him 100 blows, perhaps, with it, and he did not feel a 10th. While he said this, the centaur ran past, and 3 spirits came by, also, beneath us, whom neither I nor my guide saw until they cried, "Who are you?" Our words ceased then, and we gave our attention to them alone. I did not know them, but it happened, as it usually does for some reason, that one had to call the other, saying, "Where has Janfa gone?" At which I placed my finger over my mouth, in order to make my guide stop and wait. Reader, if you are slow to credit now what I have to tell, it will be no wonder, since I who saw it scarcely credit it myself. While I kept looking at them, a 6-footed serpent darted in front of one of them and fastened itself on him completely. It clasped his belly with its middle feet, seized his arms with the front ones, and then fixed its teeth in both his cheeks. The rear feet it stretched along his thighs and put its tail between them, and curled upwards round his loins behind. Ivy was never rooted to a tree as the foul monster twined its limbs around the other. Then they clung together, as if they were melted wax, and mixed their colours. Neither the one nor the other seemed what it had at first. Just as in front of the flame on burning paper, a brown colour appears, not yet black, and the white is consumed. The other 2 looked on, and each cried, "Ah me, Agnello, how you change! See, you are already not 2, not 1. The 2 heads had now become one, where 2 forms seemed to us merged in one face, and both were lost. 2 limbs were made of the 4 forearms. The thighs, legs, belly, and chest became such members as were never seen before. The former shape was all extinguished in them. The perverse image seemed both and neither, and like that it moved away with slow steps. As the lizard, in the great heat of the dog days, appears like a flash of lightning, scurrying from hedge to hedge,
If it crosses the track, so a little reptile came towards the bellies of the other two, burning with rage, black and livid as a peppercorn, and it pierced that part in one of them where we first receive our nourishment from our mothers, then fell down, stretched out in front of him. The thief, transfixed, gazed at it but said nothing, but with motionless feet, only yawned, as if sleep or fever had overcome him. He looked at the snake. It looked at him. The one gave out smoke violently from his wound, the other from its mouth, and the smoke met. Let Lucan be silent about Sabellus and Nasidius, and wait to hear that which I now tell. Let Ovid be silent about Cadmus and Arethusa, if he in poetry changes one into a snake and the other into a fountain. I do not envy him, since he never transmuted two natures face to face, so that both forms were eager to exchange their substance. They merged together in such a way that the serpent split its tail into a fork, and the wounded spirit brought his feet together. Along with them, the legs and thighs so stuck to one another that soon the join left no visible mark. The cleft tail took on the form lost in the other, and its skin grew soft, the other's hard. I saw the arms enter the armpits, and the 2 feet of the beast that were short lengthened themselves by as much as the arms were shortened. Then the 2 hind feet twisted together, and became the organ that a man conceals, and the wretch from his had 2 pushed out. While the smoke covers them both with a new colour, and generates hair on one part, and strips it from another, the one rose up erect, and the other fell prostrate, not by that shifting their impious gaze, beneath which they mutually exchanged features. The erect one drew his face towards the temples, and from the excess of matter that swelled there, ears came out of the smooth cheeks. That which did not slip back, but remained, formed a nose from the superfluous flesh, and enlarged the lips to their right size. He that lay prone thrust his sharpened visage forward, and drew his ears back into his head, as the snail does its horns into its shell, and his tongue, which was solid before and fit for speech, splits itself. In the other the forked tongue melds, and the smoke is still. The soul that had become a beast sped, hissing along the valley, leaving the other speaking and spluttering behind him. Then the second turned his new one shoulders towards him, and called to the other, "Who also shall crawl, as I did, along this road." So I saw the 7th chasm's bodies mutate and transmutate, and let the novelty of it be the excuse, if my pen has gone astray. Though my sight was somewhat confused, and my mind dismayed, they could not flee so secretly, that I clearly saw Puccio Sciancato, and it was he, alone, of the 3 companions, who had first arrived, who was not changed. One of the others, Francesco, was he who caused you, the people of Gavil, to weep. Rejoice, Florence, that, since you are so mighty, you beat your wings over land and sea, and your name spreads through hell itself. So among the thieves I found 5 of your citizens, at which I am ashamed, and you do not rise to great honour by it either. But if the truth is dreamed as morning comes, you will soon feel what Prato and others wish on you. And, if it were come already, it would not be too soon. Would it were so now, as indeed it must come, since it will trouble me more the older I am. We left there, and my guide remounted by the stairs that the stones had made for us to descend, and drew me up, and, following our solitary way among the crags and splinters of the cliff, the foot made no progress without the hand. I was saddened then, and sadden now again when I direct my mind to what I saw, and rein in my intellect more than I am used, so that it does not run where virtue would not guide it, and so that, if a good star, or some truer power, has granted me the talent, I may not abuse the gift.
The 8th chasm was gleaming with flames, as numerous as the fireflies the peasant sees as he rests on the hill when the sun, who lights the world, hides his face least from us, and the fly gives way to the gnat down there along the valley where he gathers grapes, perhaps, and ploughs. As soon as I came to where the floor showed itself, I saw them, and as Elisha, the mockery of whom by children was avenged by bears, saw Elijah's chariot departing, when the horses rose straight to heaven, and could not follow it with his eyes, except by the flame alone, like a little cloud ascending, so each of those flames moved along the throat of the ditch, for none of them show the theft, but every flame steals a sinner. I stood on the bridge, having so risen to look that if I had not caught hold of a rock I should have fallen in without being pushed. And the guide, who saw me so intent, said, "The spirits are inside those fires. Each veils himself in that which burns him." I replied, "Master, I feel more assured from hearing you, but had already seen that it was so, and already wished to say to you, who is in that fire that moves, divided at the summit, as if it rose from the pyre where Eteocles was cremated with his brother Polynices?" He answered me, "In there, Ulysses and Diomede are tormented, and so they go together in punishment, as formerly in war. And, in their fire, they groan at the ambush of the Trojan horse that made a doorway by which Aeneas, the noble seed of the Romans, issued out. In there they lament the trick by which Deidamia in death still weeps for Achilles, and there, for the Palladium, they endure punishment." I said, "Master, I beg you greatly, and beg again so that my prayers may be 1,000. If those inside the fires can speak, do not refuse my waiting until the horned flame comes here. You see how I lean towards it with desire." And he to me, "Your request is worth much praise, and so I accept it. But restrain your tongue. Let me speak. Since I conceive what you wish, and because they were Greeks, they might disdain your Trojan words." When the flame had come, where the time and place seemed fitting to my guide, I heard him speak so, "O you, who are two in one fire, if I was worthy of you when I lived, if I was worthy of you, greatly or a little, when on earth I wrote the high verses, do not go, but let one of you tell where he, being lost through his own actions, went to die." The greater horn of the ancient flame started to shake itself, murmuring like a flame struggling in the wind. Then, moving the tip, as if it were a tongue speaking, gave out a voice and said, "When I left Circe, who held me for more than a year, near to Gaeta, before Aeneas named it, not even my fondness for my son Telemachus, my reverence for my aged father Laertes, nor the debt of love that should have made Penelope happy, could restrain me in the desire I had to gain knowledge of the world and of human vice and worth. I set out on the wide, deep ocean, with only one ship, and that little company that had not abandoned me. I saw both shores, as far as Spain, as far as Morocco and the Isle of Sardinia, and the other islands that sea washes. I and my companions were old and slow when we came to that narrow strait where Hercules set up his pillars to warn men from going further. I left Seville to starboard. Already Ceuta was left behind on the other side. I said, O my brothers, who have reached the west through 1,000 dangers, do not deny the brief vigil your senses have left to them, experience of the unpopulated world beyond the sun. Consider your origin. You were not made to live like brutes, but to follow virtue and knowledge. With this brief speech I made my companions so eager for the voyage that I could hardly have restrained them, and, turning the prow towards morning, we made wings of our oars for that foolish flight.
always turning south. Night already saw the southern pole with all its stars, and our northern pole was so low it did not rise from the ocean bed. 5 times the light beneath the moon had been quenched and relit since we had entered on the deep pathways, when a mountain appeared to us, dim with distance, and it seemed to me the highest I had ever seen. We rejoiced, but soon our joy was turned to grief, when a tempest rose from the new land and struck the prow of our ship. 3 times it whirled her round with all the ocean. At the 4th it made the stern rise and the prow sink, as it pleased another, till the sea closed over us. The flame was now erect and quiet, no longer speaking, and was going away from us, with the permission of the sweet poet, when another, that came behind, forced us to turn our eyes towards its summit, since a confused sound escaped there, as the Sicilian bull that first bellowed with the groans of Perillus, who had smoothed it with his file, and that was right, bellowed with the sufferer's voice, so that, although it was bronze, it seemed pierced with agony. So here the dismal words, having at their source no exit from the fire, were changed into its language. But when they had found a path out through the tip, giving it the movement that the tongue had given in making them, we heard it say,
"O you, at whom I direct my voice, and who but now was speaking Lombard, saying, 'Now go, no more, I beg you. Let it not annoy you to stop and speak with me, though perhaps I have come a little too late. You see, it does not annoy me, and I burn. If you are only now fallen into this blind world from that sweet Latian land from which I bring all my guilt, tell me if Romagna has peace or war. For I was of the mountains there, between Urbino and Monte Coronado, the source from which the Tiber springs.'"
I was still leaning downwards eagerly, when my leader touched me on the side, saying, "Speak, this is a Latian." And I, who had my answer ready, began to speak then without delay. "O spirit, hidden there below, your Romagna is not, and never has been, without war in the hearts of her tyrants. But I lift no open war there now. Ravenna stands, as it has stood for many years. Guidovecchia de Polenta's eagle broods over it, so that it covers Servia with its claws. That city, Forli, that withstood so long a siege and made a bloody pile of Frenchmen, finds itself again under the paws of Ordelaffi's green lion. Malatesta, the old mastiff of Verrucchio, and the young one, Malatestino, who made bad jailers for Montagna, sharpen their teeth where they used to. Faenza on the Lamone, and Imola on the Santerno, those cities lead out Pagano, the lion of the White Lair, who changes sides when he goes from south to north, and Cesena, that city whose walls the Savio bathes, where it lies between the mountain and the plain, likewise lives between freedom and tyranny. Now, I beg you, tell us who you are. Do not be harder than others have been to you, so that your name may keep its lustre on earth." When the flame had roared for a while, as usual, it flickered the sharp point to and fro, and then gave out this breath.
"If I thought my answer was given to one who could ever return to the world, this flame would flicker no more. But since, if what I hear is true, no one ever returned alive from this deep, I reply without fear of defamation. I, Guido da Montefeltro, was a man of arms, and then became a Cordelia of St. Francis, hoping to make amends, so habited, and indeed my hopes would have been realized in full, but for the great priest, Boniface, evil to him, who drew me back to my first sins, and how and why, I want you to hear from me. While I was in the form of bones and pulp that my mother gave me, my actions were not those of the lion, but of the fox. I knew all the tricks and coverts, and employed the art of them so well that the noise went out to the ends of the earth. when I found myself arrived at that point of life, when everyone should furl their sails and gather in the ropes, what had pleased me before now grieved me, and with repentance and confession I turned monk. Ah, misery! Alas, it would have served me well. But the prince of the Pharisees, that pope, waging war near the Lateran, and not with Saracens or Jews, since all his enemies were Christians, and none had been to conquer Acre, or been a merchant in the Sultan's land, had no regard for the highest office, nor holy orders, nor my habit of St. Francis, that used to make those who wore it leaner. But as the Emperor Constantine sought out St. Sylvester on Mount Soracte to cure his leprosy, so this man called me as a doctor to cure his feverish pride. He demanded counsel of me, and I kept silent, since his speech seemed drunken. Then he said to me, "Do not be doubtful. I absolve you beforehand, and you teach me how to act, so that I may raze the fortress of Palestrina to the ground. I can open and close heaven, as you know, with the 2 keys that my predecessor, Celestine, did not prize." Then the weighty arguments forced me to consider silence worse, and I said, "Father, since you absolve me of that sin into which I must now fall, large promises to your enemies, with little delivery of them, will give you victory from your high throne. Afterwards, when I was dead, St. Francis came for me, but one of the black cherubim said to him, 'Do not take him. Do not wrong me. He must descend among my servants, because he gave a counsel of deceit, since when I have kept him fast by the hair, he who does not repent cannot be absolved. Nor can one repent a thing, and at the same time will it, since the contradiction is not allowed.' O miserable self! How I started when he seized me, saying to me, 'Perhaps you did not think I was a logician.' He carried me to Minos, who coiled his tail 8 times round his fearful back, and then, biting it in great rage, said, 'This sinner is for the thievish fire,' and so I am lost here, as you see, and, clothed like this, go inwardly grieving." When he had ended his speech, so the flame went sorrowing, writhing and flickering its sharp horn. We passed on, my guide and I, along the cliff, up to the other arch that covers the next ditch, in which the reward is paid to those who collect guilt by sowing discord. Who could ever fully tell, even with repeated unimprisoned words, the blood and wounds I saw now? Every tongue would certainly fail, since our speech and memory have too small a capacity to comprehend so much. If all the people, too, were gathered, who once grieved for their blood, in the fateful land of Apulia, by reason of the Samnite war of the Romans of Trojan seed, and those from that long Punic war that, as Livy writes, who does not err, yielded so great a wealth of rings from Cannae's battlefield, and those who felt the pain of blows by withstanding Robert Guiscard, and the rest, whose bones are still heaped at Ceperano, where all the Apulians turned traitor for Charles of Anjou, and there at Tagliacozzo, where old Alardo's advice to Charles conquered without weapons, and some were to show pierced limbs and others severed stumps, it would be nothing to equal the hideous state of the 9th chasm. Even a wine cask that has lost a stave in the middle or the end does not yawn as widely as a spirit I saw, cleft from the chin down to the part that gives out the foulest sound. The entrails hung between his legs, the organs appeared, and the miserable gut that makes excrement of what is swallowed. While I stood looking wholly at him, he gazed at me and opened his chest with his hands, saying, "See how I tear myself! See how Mahomet is ripped!
In front of me, Ali goes, weeping, his face split from chin to scalp, and all the others you see here were sowers of scandal and schism in their lifetimes, so they are cleft like this. There is a devil behind who tears us cruelly like this, reapplying his sword blade to each of this crowd when they have wandered round the sad road, since the wounds heal before any reach him again. But who are you, who muse there on the cliff, maybe to delay your path to punishment in sentence for your crimes? My master replied, Death has not come to him yet, nor does guilt lead him to torment, but it is incumbent on me, who am dead, to grant him full experience, and lead him through the Inferno, down here from circle to circle, and this is truth, that I tell you. When they heard him, more than 100 spirits in the ditch halted to look at me, forgetting their agony in their wonder. After lifting up one foot to leave, Mahomet said to me, Well now, you who will soon see the sun, perhaps tell Fra Dolcino of the Apostolic Brothers, if he does not wish to follow me quickly down here, to furnish himself with supplies, so that the snowfalls may not bring a victory for the Novares that otherwise would be difficult to achieve. Then he strode forward to depart. Another, who had his throat slit and nose cut off to the eyebrows and had only a single ear, standing to gaze and wonder with the rest, opened his windpipe that was red outside all over and said,
You that no guilt condemns, and whom I have seen above on Latian ground, unless resemblance deceives me, remember Pierre della Medicina, if you ever return to see that gentle plain that slopes down from Vercelli to Marcabo, and make known to the worthiest two men in Fano, Messer Guido and Agnolello, also that unless prophetic powers here are in vain, they will be cast out of their boat and drowned near Cattolica by treachery. You never saw a greater crime between the Isles of Cyprus and Majorca, not even among those carried out by pirates or by Greeks. Malatestino, the treacherous one, who only sees with one eye and holds the land, that one who is here with me, wishes he had never seen, will make them come to parley with him, then act so that they will have no need of vow or prayer to counter Folcara's winds.
And I said to him, If you would have me carry news of you above, show me and explain who he is that rues the sight of it. Then he placed his hand on the jaw of one of his companions and opened the mouth, saying,
This is he, and he does not speak. This outcast quelled Caesar's doubts at the Rubicon, saying that delay always harms men who are ready.
Oh, how dejected Curio seemed to me, with his tongue slit in his palate, who was so bold in speech, and one who had both hands severed, lifting the stumps through the dark air so that their blood stained his face, said,
You will remember Mosca, too, who said, Alas, a thing done has an end, which was seed of evil to the Tuscan race.
And death to your people, I added, at which he, accumulating pain on pain, went away like one sad and mad. But I remained behind to view the crowd, and saw a thing which, without more proof, I would be afraid to even tell, except that conscience reassures me, the good companion that strengthens a man under the armour of his self-respect. I saw it clearly, and still seem to see, a headless trunk that goes on before like the others in that miserable crew, and holds its severed head by the hair, swinging like a lantern in its hand. It looked at us and said, "Ah, me!" It made a lamp of itself to light itself, and there were 2 in 1, and 1 in 2. How that can be, he knows, who made it so. When it was right at the foot of our bridge, it lifted its arm high, complete with the head, to bring its words near to us, which were, "Now you see the grievous punishment, you who go, alive and breathing, to see the dead. Look if any are as great as this, and so that you may carry news of me, know that I am Bertrand de Born, he who gave evil counsel to the young king. I made the father and the son rebel against each other. Ahithophel did no more for Absalom and David by his malicious stirrings. Because I parted those who were once joined, I carry my intellect, alas, split from its origin in this body. So in me is seen just retribution." The multitude of people and the many wounds had made my eyes so tear-filled that they longed to stop and weep. But Virgil said to me, "Why are you still gazing? Why does your sight still rest down there on the sad, mutilated shadows? You did not do so at the other chasms. Think, if you wish to number them, that the valley circles 22 miles, and the moon is already underneath our feet. The time is short now that is given us, and there are other things to view than those you see." I replied then, "Had you noticed the reason why I looked, perhaps you might still have allowed me to stay." Meanwhile, the guide was moving on, and I went behind him, making my reply and adding now, "In the hollow where I held my gaze, I believe a spirit of my own blood laments the guilt that cost so greatly there." Then the master said, "Do not let your thoughts be distracted by him. Attend to something else. Let him stay there. I saw him point to you at the foot of the little bridge and threaten angrily with his finger, and I heard them call him Geri del Bello. You were so entangled then with him who once held Altaforte that you did not look that way, so he departed." I said, "O my guide, his violent murder made him indignant, not yet avenged on his behalf by any that shares his shame. Therefore, I guess, he went away without speaking to me, and by that has made me pity him the more." So we talked as far as the first place on the causeway that would have revealed the next valley right to its floor if it had been lighter. When we were above the last cloister of Malabolg, so that its lay brothers could be seen, many groans pierced me, whose arrows were barbed with pity, at which I covered my ears with my hands. Such pain there was, as there would be, if the diseases in the hospitals of Valdichiana, Maremma, and Sardinia between July and September were all rife in one ditch. A stench arose from it, such as issues from putrid limbs. We descended on the last bank of the long causeway, again on the left, and then my sight was clearer, down to the depths, where infallible justice, the minister of the Lord on high, punishes the falsifiers that it accounts for here. I do not think it would have been a greater sadness to see the people of plague-ridden Aegina when the air was so malignant that every animal, even the smallest worm, was killed, and afterwards, as poets say, for certain, the ancient race was restored from the seed of ants, than it was to see the spirits languishing in scattered heaps through that dim valley. This one lay on its belly, that on the shoulders of the other, and some were crawling along the wretched path. Step by step we went, without word, gazing at and listening to the sick who could not lift their bodies. I saw 2 sitting, leaning on each other, as one pan is lent to warm against another. They were marked with scabs from head to foot, and I never saw a stable lad his master waits for, or one who stays awake unwillingly, use a currycomb as fiercely as each of these 2 clawed himself with his nails, because of the intensity of their itching, that has no other relief. And so the nails dragged the scurf off, as a knife does the scales from bream or other fish with larger scales. My guide began to speak. "O you, who strip your chainmail with your fingers, and often make pincers of them, tell us if there is any Latian among those here inside, and may your nails be enough for that task for eternity." One of them replied, weeping, "We are both Latians, whom you see so mutilated here. But who are you who inquire of us?" And the guide said, "I am one who, with this living man, descends from steep to steep, and mean to show him hell." Then the mutual prop broke, and each one turned, trembling towards me, along with others that heard him by the echo. The good master addressed me directly, saying, "Tell them what you wish." And I began as he desired. "So that your memory will not fade from human minds in the first world, but will live for many sons, tell us who you are and of what race. Do not let your ugly and revolting punishment make you afraid to reveal yourselves to me." The one replied, "I was Grifolino of Arezzo, and Albero of Siena had me burned. But what I died for did not send me here. It is true, I said to him, jesting, I could lift myself into the air in flight. And he, who had great desire and little brain, wished me to show him that art, and only because I could not make him Daedalus, he caused me to be burned by one who looked on him as a son. But to the last chasm of the 10, Minos, who cannot err, condemned me for the alchemy I practiced in the world." And I said to the poet, "Now was there ever a people as vain as the Sienese? Certainly not the French by far." At which the other leper, hearing me, replied to my words, "What of Strica, who contrived to spend so little, and Niccolo, who first discovered the costly use of cloves in that garden, Siena, where such seed takes root, and that company in which Caccia Vacciano threw away his vineyard and his vast forest, and the Abbagliato showed his wit? But so that you may know who seconds you like this against the Sienese, sharpen your eye on me, so that my face may reply to you. So you will see I am Capocchio's shadow, who made false metals by alchemy. And you must remember, if I know you rightly, how well I aped nature." At the time when Juno was angry, as she had shown more than once with the Theban race because of Jupiter's affair with Semele, she so maddened King Athamas that, seeing his wife Ino go by, carrying her 2 sons in her arms, he cried, "Spread the hunting nets, so that I can take the lioness and her cubs at the pass!" And then stretched out his pitiless talons, snatching the one, named Learchus, and, whirling him round, dashed him against the rock. And Ino drowned herself, and her other burden, Melicertes. And after Fortune had brought down the high Trojan pride that dared all, so that Priam the king and his kingdom were destroyed, Queen Hecuba, a sad, wretched captive, having witnessed the sacrifice of Polysena, alone on the sea-shore, when she recognized the body of her Polydorus, barked like a dog, driven out of her senses, so greatly had her sorrow racked her mind. But neither Theban nor Trojan furies were ever seen embodied so cruelly in stinging creatures, or even less in human limbs, as I saw displayed in 2 shades, pallid and naked, that ran, biting as a hungry pig does when he is driven out of his sty. The one came to Capocchio, and fixed his tusks in his neck, so that, dragging him along, it made the solid floor rasp his belly. And the Aretine, Grifolino, who was left, said to me, trembling, "That goblin is Gianni Schicchi, and he goes rabidly, mangling others like that." I replied, "Oh, be pleased to tell us who the other is, before it snatches itself away, and may it not plant its teeth in you." And he to me,
That is the ancient spirit of incestuous Myrrha, who loved her father, Cinyras, with more than lawful love. She came to him and sinned, under cover of another's name, just as the one who is vanishing there undertook to disguise himself as Buoso Donati, so as to gain the mare, called the Lady of the Herd, by forging a will and giving it legal form. When the furious pair, on whom I had kept my eye, were gone, I turned to look at the other spirits, born to evil. I saw one who would have been shaped like a lute if he had only had his groin cut short at the place where a man is forked. The heavy dropsy that swells the limbs with its badly transformed humours so that the face does not match the belly made him hold his lips apart, as the fevered patient does who, through thirst, curls one lip towards the chin and the other upwards. He said to us,
"O you, who are exempt from punishment in this grim world, and why I do not know, look and attend to the misery of Master Adam. I had enough of what I wished when I was alive, and now, alas, I crave a drop of water. The little streams that fall from the green hills of Casentino down to the Arno, making cool, moist channels, are constantly in my mind, and not in vain, since the image of them parches me far more than the disease that wears the flesh from my face. The rigid justice that examines me takes its opportunity from the place where I sinned to give my sighs more rapid flight. That is Ravenna, where I counterfeited the coin of Florence, stamped with the Baptist's image. For that on earth I left my body burned. But if I could see the wretched soul of Guido here, or Alessandro, or Aginolfo, their brother, I would not exchange that sight for Branda's fountain. Guido is down here already, if the crazed spirits going round speak truly. But what use is it to me, whose limbs are tired? If I were only light enough to move, even an inch every 100 years, I would already have started on the road to find him among this disfigured people, though it winds around 11 miles and is no less than half a mile across. Because of them I am with such a crew. They induced me to stamp those florins that were adulterated with 3 carats alloy.
I said to him, "Who are those abject two, lying close to your right edge, and giving off smoke like a hand bathed in winter?" He replied,
"I found them here when I rained down into this pound, and they have not turned since then, and may never turn, I believe."
One is the false wife who accused Joseph. The other is lying Sinon, the Greek from Troy. A burning fever makes them stink so strongly. And Sinon, who perhaps took offence at being named so blackly, struck Adamo's rigid belly with his fist, so that it resounded like a drum, and Master Adam struck him in the face with his arm, that seemed no softer, saying to him,
"I have an arm free for such a situation, though I am kept from moving by my heavy limbs."
At which Sinon answered,
"You were not so ready with it, going to the fire, but as ready and readier when you were coining."
And he of the dropsy,
"You speak truth in that, but you were not so truthful a witness there when you were questioned about the truth at Troy."
"If I spoke falsely, you falsified the coin," Sinon said, "and I am here for the one crime, but you for more than any other devil."
He who had the swollen belly answered,
"Think of the wooden horse, you liar, and let it be a torment to you that all the world knows of it."
The Greek replied,
"Let the thirst that cracks the tongue be your torture, and the foul water make your stomach a barrier in front of your eyes."
Then the coiner,
"Your mouth gapes wide as usual to speak ill. If I have a thirst, and moisture swells me, you have the burning, and a head that hurts you, and would not need many words of invitation to lap at the mirror of Narcissus."
I was standing, all intent on hearing them,
when the master said to me, "Now keep gazing much longer, and I will quarrel with you." When I heard him speak to me in anger, I turned towards him with such a feeling of shame that it comes over me again, as I only think of it. And like someone who dreams of something harmful to them, and dreaming, wishes it were a dream, so that they long for what is, as if it were not, that I became, who, lacking power to speak, wished to make an excuse, and all the while did so, not thinking I was doing it. My master said, "Less shamefacedness would wash away a greater fault than yours. So unburden yourself of sorrow, and know that I am always with you. Should it happen that fate takes you where people are in similar conflict, since the desire to hear it is a vulgar desire." One and the same tongue at first wounded me, so that it painted both my cheeks with blushes, and then gave out the ointment for the wound. So I have heard the spear of Achilles and his father Peleus was the cause first of sadness, and then of a healing gift. We turned our back on the wretched valley, crossing without a word, up by the bank that circles round it. Here was less darkness than night, and less light than day, so that my vision showed only a little in front. But I heard a high-pitched horn sound, so loudly that it would have made thunder seem quiet. It directed my eyes, that followed its passage back, straight to a single point. Roland did not sound his horn so fiercely after the sad rout when Charlemagne had lost the holy war at Roncesvalles. I had kept my head turned for a while in that direction, when I seemed to make out many high towers, at which I said, "Master, tell me, what city is this?" And he to me, "Because your eyes traverse the darkness from too far away, it follows that you imagine wrongly. You will see quite plainly when you reach there how much the sense is deceived by distance. So press on more strongly." Then he took me lovingly by the hand and said, "Before we go further, so that the reality might seem less strange to you, know that they are giants, not towers, and are in a pit from the navel downwards, all of them around its bank. As the eye, when a mist is disappearing, gradually recreates what was hidden by the vapour thickening the air, so, while approaching closer and closer to the brink, piercing through that gross, dark atmosphere, error left me, and my fear increased. As Monteregione crowns its round wall with towers, so the terrible giants, whom Jupiter still threatens from the heavens when he thunders, turreted with half their bodies the bank that circles the well. And I already saw the face of one, the shoulders, chest, the greater part of the belly, and the arms down both sides. When nature abandoned the art of making creatures like these, she certainly did well by removing such killers from warfare, and if she does not repent of making elephants and whales, whoever looks at the issue subtly considers her more prudent and more right in that, since where the instrument of mind is joined to ill will and power, men have no defence against it. His face seemed to me as long and large as the bronze pine cone in front of St. Peter's in Rome, and his other features were in proportion, so that the bank that covered him from the middle onwards revealed so much of him above that 3 Frieslanders would have boasted in vain of reaching his hair, since I saw 30 large handspans of him down from the place where a man pins his cloak. The savage mouth, for which no sweeter hymns were fit, began to rave.
"Raphael Mayamech Sabi Almi."
And my guide, turning to him, said, "Foolish spirit, stick to your hunting horn, and vent your breath through that, when rage or some other passion stirs you. Search round your neck, O confused soul, and you will find the belt where it is slung, and see that which arcs across your huge chest." Then he said to me, "He declares himself. This is Nimrod, through whose evil thought one language is not still used throughout the whole world. Let us leave him standing here, and not speak to him in vain,
since every language to him is like his to others, that no one understands. So we went on, turning to the left, and, a crossbow shot away, we found the next one, far larger and fiercer. Who and what the power might be that bound him I cannot say, but he had his right arm pinioned behind, and the other in front, by a chain that held him tight from the neck down, and on the visible part of him reached its fifth turn. My guide said, "This proud spirit had the will to try his strength against high Jupiter, and so has this reward. Ephialtes is his name, and he made the great attempt when the giants made the gods fear, and the arms he shook then, now he never moves." And I said to him, if it were possible, I would wish my eyes to light on vast Briareus, to which he replied, "You will see Antaeus nearby, who speaks and is unchained, and will set us down in the deepest abyss of guilt. He whom you wish to see is far beyond, and is formed and bound like this one, except he seems more savage in his features. No huge earthquake ever shook a tower as violently as Ephialtes promptly shook himself. Then I feared death more than ever, and the fear alone would have been enough to cause it, had I not seen his chains. We then went further on, and reached Antaeus, who projected 20 feet from the pit, not including his head. The master spoke. "O you, who of old took 1,000 lions for your prey in the fateful valley near Zama, that made Scipio heir to glory, when Hannibal retreated with his army, you, through whom it might still be believed the giant sons of earth would have overcome the gods if you had been at the great war with your brothers, set us down, and do not be shy to do it, where the cold imprisons the river Cocytus in the 9th circle. Do not make us ask Tityos or Typhon. Bend, and do not curl your lips in scorn. This man can give which is longed for here. He can refresh your fame on earth, since he is alive and still expects long life, if grace does not call him to her before his time." So the master spoke, and Antaeus quickly stretched out both hands, from which Hercules of old once felt the power, and seized my guide. Virgil, when he felt his grasp, said to me, "Come here, so that I may carry you." Then he made one bundle of himself and me. To me, who stood watching to see Antaeus stoop, he seemed as the leaning tower at Bologna. The Carissenda appears to the view under the leaning side when a cloud is passing over it, and it hangs in the opposite direction. It was such a terrible moment I would have wished to have gone by another route. But he set us down gently in the deep that swallowed Lucifer and Judas, and did not linger there, bent, but straightened himself like a mast raised in a boat. If I had words rough and hoarse enough to fit the dismal chasm on which all the other rocky cliffs weigh and converge, I would squeeze out the juice of my imagination more completely. But since I have not, I bring myself, not without fear, to describe the place. To tell of the pit of the universe is not a task to be taken up in play, nor in a language that has words like mother and father. But may the muses, those ladies who helped Amphion shut Thebes behind its walls, aid my speech, so that my words may not vary from the truth. O you people, created evil beyond all others, in this place that is hard to speak of, it were better if you had been sheep or goats here on earth. When we were down inside the dark well, beneath the giant's feet, and much lower, and I was still staring at the steep cliff, I heard a voice say to me, "Take care as you pass, so that you do not tread with your feet on the heads of the wretched, weary brothers." At which I turned and saw a lake in front of me and underneath my feet, that, because of the cold, appeared like glass, not water. The Danube in Austria never formed so thick a veil for its winter course.
nor the dawn, far off under the frozen sky as was here. If Mount Tamburnic in the east, or Mount Petrapana had fallen on it, it would not have even creaked at the margin. And as frogs sit, croaking with their muzzles above water, at the time when peasant women often dream of gleaning, so the sad shadows sat in the ice, livid to where the blush of shame appears, chattering with their teeth like storks. Each one held his face turned down. The cold is witnessed amongst them by their mouths, and their sad hearts by their eyes. When I had looked around a while, turning to my feet, I saw two, so compressed together that the hair of their heads was intermingled. I said, "Tell me, you, who press your bodies together so, who are you?" And they twisted their necks up, and when they had lifted their faces towards me, their eyes, which were only moist inwardly before, gushed at the lids, and the frost iced fast the tears between them and sealed them up again. No vice ever clamped wood to wood as firmly, so that they butted one another like two he-goats overcome by such rage. And one, who had lost both ears to the cold, with his face still turning down, said, "Why are you staring at us so fiercely? If you want to know who these two are, they are the degli Alberti, Alessandro and Napoleone. The valley where the Bisenzio runs down was theirs, and their father Alberto's. They issued from one body, and you can search the whole Kline and will not find shades more worthy of being set in ice. Not even Mordred, whose chest and shadow were pierced at one blow by his father's, King Arthur's lance, nor Focaccia, nor this one, who obstructs my face with his head, so that I cannot see him further, who was named Sassol Mascheroni. If you are a Tuscan, now, you know truly what he was. And so that you do not put me to more speech, know that I am Camicion de Pazzi, and am waiting for Carlino, my kinsman, to outdo me." Afterwards I saw 1,000 faces, made dog-like by the cold, at which a trembling overcomes me, and always will when I think of the frozen fords, and, whether it was will, or fate, or chance, I do not know. But, walking among the heads, I struck my foot violently against one face. Weeping, it cried out to me, "Why do you trample on me? If you do not come to increase the revenge for Monteperti, why do you trouble me?" And I, "My master, wait here for me now, so that I can rid me of a doubt concerning him. Then you can make as much haste as you please." The master stood, and I said to that shade which still reviled me bitterly, "Who are you who reproach others in this way?" "No, who are you?" he answered, "who go through the Antenora striking the faces of others in such a way that if you were alive it would be an insult?" I replied, "I am alive, and if you long for fame, it might be a precious thing to you if I put your name among the others." And he to me, "I long for the opposite. Take yourself off, and annoy me no more, since you little know how to flatter on this icy slope." Then I seized him by the back of the scalp and said, "You need to name yourself before there is not a hair left on your head." At which he said to me, "Even if you pluck me, I will not tell you who I am, nor demonstrate it to you, though you tear at my head 1,000 times." I already had his hair coiled in my hand, and had pulled away more than one tuft of it, while he barked and kept his eyes down, when another spirit cries, "What is wrong with you, Bocca? Is it not enough that you chatter with your jaws, but you have to bark too? What devil is at you?" I said, "Now, accursed traitor, I do not want you to speak, since I will carry true news of you to your shame." He answered, "Go and say what you please, but if you get out from here, Do not be silent about him who had his tongue so ready just now. Here he regrets taking French silver. You can say, I saw Buoso de Duera there, where the sinners stand caught in the ice. If you are asking who else was there, you have Tesauro de Beccaria, whose throat was slit by Florence. Gianni di Soldanier is further on, with Ganelon and Tribaldello, who unbarred the gates of Faenza while it slept. We had already left him when I saw two spirits frozen in a hole so close together that the one head capped the other, and the uppermost set his teeth into the other, as bread is chewed out of hunger. There, where the back of the head joins the nape, Tydeus gnawed the head of Menalippus no differently out of rage than this one the skull and other parts. I said, O you who, in such a brutal way, inflict the mark of your hatred on him whom you devour, tell me why, on condition that, if you complain of him with reason, I, knowing who you are, and his offence, may repay you still in the world above, if the tongue I speak with is not withered. That sinner raised his mouth from the savage feast, wiping it on the hair of the head he had stripped behind. Then he began, You wish me to renew desperate grief that wrings my heart at the very thought before I even tell of it. But if my words are to be the seed that bears fruit in the infamy of the traitor whom I gnaw, you will see me speak and weep together. I do not know who you are, nor by what means you have come down here, but when I hear you, you seem to me in truth a Florentine. You must know that I am Count Ugolino, and this is the Archbishop Ruggieri. Now I will tell you why I am a neighbor such as this to him. It is not necessary to say that, confiding in him, I was taken through the effects of his evil schemes, and afterwards killed. But what you cannot have learnt, how cruel my death was, you will hear, and know if he has injured me. A narrow hole inside that tower, which is called Famine, from my death, and in which others must yet be imprisoned, had already shown me several moons through its opening, when I slept an evil sleep that tore the curtain of the future for me. This man seemed to me the lord and master, chasing the wolf and its whelps on Monte di San Giuliano that blocks the view of Lucca from the Pisans. He had the Gualandi, Sismondi, and Lanfranchi running with him, with hounds slender, keen, and agile. After a short chase, the father and his sons seemed weary to me, and I thought I saw their flanks torn by sharp teeth. When I woke, before dawn, I heard my sons, who were with me, crying in their sleep and asking for food. You are truly cruel if you do not sorrow already at the thought of what my heart presaged. And if you do not weep, what do you weep at? They were awake now, and the hour nearing at which our food used to be brought to us, and each of us was anxious from dreaming, when below I heard the door of the terrible tower locked up, at which I gazed into the faces of my sons, without saying a word. I did not weep. I grew like stone inside. They wept, and my little Anselm said to me, Father, you stare so. What is wrong? But I shed no tears, and did not answer all that day, or the next night, till another sun rose over the world, when a little ray of light was sent into the mournful jail, and I saw in their four faces the aspect of my own. I bit my hands from grief, and they, thinking that I did it from hunger, suddenly stood and said, Father,
It will give us less pain if you gnaw at us. You put this miserable flesh on us. Now strip it off again." Then I calmed myself, in order not to make them more unhappy. That day and the next, we all were silent. Ah, solid earth, why did you not open? When we had come to the 4th day, Gaddo threw himself down at my feet, saying, "My father, why do you not help me?" There he died, and even as you see me, I saw the 3 others fall one by one. Between the 5th and 6th days, at which, already blind, I took to groping over each of them, and called out to them for 3 days, when they were dead. Then, fasting at last, had power to overcome grief. When he had spoken this, he seized the wretched skull again with his teeth, which were as strong as a dog's on the bone, his eyes distorted. Ah, Pisa, shame among the people of the lovely land where sea is heard. Let the isles of Caprara and Gorgona shift and block the Arno at its mouth, since your neighbours are so slow to punish you, so that it may drown every living soul. Since, if Count Ugolino had the infamy of having betrayed your castles, you ought not to have put his sons to the torture. Their youth made Uguccione and Brigata, and the other 2, my words above have named, innocents, you modern thieves. We went further on, with the rugged frost encases another people, not bent down, but reversed completely. The very weeping there prevents them weeping, and the grief that makes an impediment to their sight turns inward to increase their agony, since the first tears form a knot, and, like a crystal visor, fill the cavities below their eyebrows. And though all feeling had left my face, through the cold, as though from a callus, it seemed to me now as if I felt a breeze, at which I said, "Master, what causes this? Is the heat not all quenched here below?" At which he said to me, "Soon you will be where your own eyes will answer that, seeing the source that generates the air." And one of the sad shadows in the icy crust cried out to us,
"O spirits, so cruel that the last place of all is reserved for you, remove the solid veils from my face, that I might vent the grief a little that chokes my heart before the tears freeze again."
At which I said to him, "If you would have my help, tell me who you are, and if I do not disburden you, may I have to journey to the depths of the ice." He replied to that,
"I am Friar Alberigo. I am he of the fruits of the evil garden, who here received dates made of ice to match my figs."
I said to him, "Oh, are you dead already?" And he to me,
"How my body stands in the world above, I do not know. Such is the power of this Ptolemea, that the soul often falls down here before Atropos cuts the thread. And so that you may more willingly clear the frozen tears from your face, know that when the soul betrays, as mine did, her body is taken from her by a demon, there and then, who rules it after that, till its time is complete. She falls plunging down to this well, and perhaps the body of this other shade that winters here behind me is still visible in the world above. You must know it, if you have only now come down here. It is Sir Brancadoria, and many years have passed since he was imprisoned here."
I said to him, "I believe you are lying to me. Brancadoria is not dead, and eats and drinks and sleeps and puts on his clothes." He said,
"Michel Zanche had not yet arrived in the ditch of the Malebranche above, there where the tenacious pit boils, when this man left a devil in his place in his own body, and one in the body of his kinsman who did the treachery with him. But reach your hand here. Open my eyes."
And I did not open them for him.
and it was a courtesy to be rude to him. Ah, Genoese, men divorced from all morality and filled with every corruption. Why are you not dispersed from off the earth? I found the worst spirit of Romagna was one of you, who for his actions even now bathes as a soul in Cocytus, and still seems alive in earth in his own body. Vexilla regis prodeunt inferni. The banners of the King of Hell advance towards us. So look in front of you to see if you discern him, said my master. I seemed to see a tall structure as a mill that the wind turns seems from a distance when a dense mist breathes, or when night falls in our hemisphere, and I shrank back behind my guide because of the wind, since there was no other shelter. I had already come, and with fear I put it into words, where the souls were completely enclosed, and shone through like straw in glass. Some are lying down. Some stand upright, one on its head, another on the soles of its feet, another bent head to foot like a bow. When we had gone on far enough that my guide was able to show me Lucifer, the monster who was once so fair, he removed himself from me and made me stop, saying, "Behold this, and behold the place where you must arm yourself with courage." Reader, do not ask how chilled and hoarse I became then, since I do not write it, since all words would fail to tell me. I did not die, yet I was not alive. Think yourself now, if you have any grain of imagination, what I became, deprived of either state. The emperor of the sorrowful kingdom stood, waist upwards from the ice, and I am nearer to a giant in size than the giants are to one of his arms. Think how great the whole is that corresponds to such a part. If he was once as fair as he is now ugly, and lifted up his forehead against his maker, well may all evil flow from him. Oh, how great a wonder it seemed to me when I saw 3 faces on his head. The one in front was fiery red, the other 2 were joined to it, above the center of each shoulder, and linked at the top, and the right-hand one seemed whitish yellow. The left was black to look at, like those who come from where the Nile rises. Under each face sprang 2 vast wings of a size fit for such a bird. I never saw ships' sails as wide. They had no feathers, but were like a bat's in form and texture, and he was flapping them, so that 3 winds blew out away from him, by which all Cocytus was frozen. He wept from 6 eyes, and tears and bloody spume gushed down 3 chins. He chewed a sinner between his teeth, with every mouth like a grinder, so in that way he kept 3 of them in torment. To the one in front, the biting was nothing compared to the tearing, since at times his back was left completely stripped of skin. The master said, "That soul up there that suffers the greatest punishment, he who has his head inside and flails his legs outside, is Judas Iscariot. Of the other 2 who have their heads hanging downwards, the one who hangs from the face that is black is Brutus. See how he writhes and does not utter a word. And the other is Cassius, who seems so long in limb. But night is ascending, and now we must go, since we have seen it all." I clasped his neck as he wished, and he seized the time and place, and when the wings were wide open, grasped Satan's shaggy sides, and then, from tuft to tuft, climbed down between the matted hair and frozen crust. When we had come to where the thigh joint turns, just at the swelling of the haunch, my guide, with effort and difficulty, reversed his head to where his feet had been, and grabbed the hair like a climber, so that I thought we were dropping back to hell.
"Hold tight," said my guide, panting like a man exhausted, "since by these stairs we must depart from this evil." Then he clambered into an opening in the rock and set me down to sit on its edge, then turned his cautious step towards me. I raised my eyes, thinking to see Lucifer as I had left him, but saw him with his legs projecting upwards, and let those denser people, who do not see what point I had passed, judge if I was confused then or not. My master said, "Get up, on your feet. The way is long, and difficult the road, and the sun already returns to mid-tierce." Where we stood was no palace hall, but a natural cell with a rough floor, and short of light. When I had risen, I said, "My master, before I leave the abyss, speak to me a while, and lead me out of error. Where is the ice? And why is this monster fixed upside down? And how has the sun moved from evening to dawn in so short a time, and he to me? You imagine you are still on the other side of the earth's centre, where I caught hold of the evil worm's hair, he who pierces the world. You were on that side of it, as long as I climbed down, but when I reversed myself, you passed the point to which weight is drawn from everywhere, and are now below the hemisphere, opposite that which covers the wide dry land, and opposite that under whose zenith the man was crucified, who was born and lived without sin. You have your feet on a little sphere that forms the other side of the Judeca. Here it is morning, when it is evening there, and he who made a ladder for us of his hair is still as he was before. He fell from heaven on this side of the earth, and the land that projected here before veiled itself with the ocean for fear of him, and entered our hemisphere, and that which now projects on this side left an empty space here, and shot outwards, maybe in order to escape from him. Down there is a space, as far from Beelzebub as his cave extends, not known by sight, but by the sound of a stream falling through it. Along the bed of rock it is hollowed out, into a winding course and a slow incline. The guide and I entered by that hidden path, to return to the clear world, and, not caring to rest, we climbed up, he first and I second, until through a round opening I saw the beautiful things that the sky holds, and we issued out from there to see again the stars. Thank you for listening to Bominable Bominations. We here reach our conclusion of Dante's Inferno. There are many more strange, eerie tales to listen to on this channel, and if you have enjoyed my relating of this particular story, I hope that you may feel compelled to leave a review wherever you happen to be listening, to like, to subscribe, to rate, etc., etc. Tune in next evening for another chilling tale, and as always, take care. It's a scary world out there.